So excited to be chatting with you guys. Review is such a great episode of television, and I just rewatched it recently after having it's been like a year probably since I'd watched it the first time, and it's still just as good, even though Hulu those ads in between. I don't like how it breaks it up a little. I was like, I need to watch it on my screener.
Yeah.
But yeah, but what was the collaboration process like for all of you? I feel like this probably had to be a pretty intense episode.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for Scott more than the rest of us. So, yeah, Scott, why don't you start with how you guys pulled this off on set?
Well, it was interesting. As you're probably well aware, that's done in a single take, even though it's broken up with a little kind of intermission point there in the final edit. But it was shot as a complete take. So there's a lot going on. We were fortunate to do a couple of rehearsals, so we had some idea of what was going to be going on. But things are rather fluid on the show. So just because we did it in the rehearsal doesn't mean we're going to do it when we actually film it. And Chris, the director, is very fond of letting the actors do improvised dialogue in some scenes, so we always have to be prepared for that happening. So really, the biggest problem was just the logistical challenge of the set. It's that set you see is pretty much like a regular restaurant. There's nothing, it's small rooms, it's low ceilings, it's pretty much like working on location. So trying to work physically around that set is really a challenge. And my boom operators and the camera operators did a fabulous job of making it work. I don't know how they did it. When I was on set for one rehearsal, I watched it and I go, okay, I think I'm just going to go back to my console here and let them figure this all out, because there's a lot going on, and um, the actors also did really a great job of working around some of the obstructions they have to work around on the set. They have to be aware of what the camera crew is doing. So it's there's a lot of moving pieces, and if one piece doesn't work, the whole thing falls apart. So they did a great, everyone did a great job of making all that work. And all we do is just put in as many microphones as we can find a place to put them. And then I launch it all on Evan, and he probably goes ballistic when he sees it all, because
No, the opposite. The opposite.
because
Because
you
when I
never
get all
know.
that material from Scott, it's more stuff than you might normally get, but it's also necessary because the cast is so big. You want to hear what someone's saying in the back of the set slash restaurant. Um, Even if the camera isn't trained on them, that's not always the case. The boom guy can only get to a few people. If there's somebody in the back yelling something and we really want it later, it's kind of great that we had all that stuff. Um, and I've said this before, but I've worked on literally documentaries with somebody just sitting at a desk like I am now, and they can't manage to get a clean sound off of a person sitting stationary. And yet Scott was able to get 12, 13, however many people he had going on there in that scene, and they were all clean, and they're all with few exceptions that you can clean up with the use of the kind of technology we have now. Um, Everything was available to be able to send it to Major in a relatively orderly way that was clean, that made sense, and then he could do with it as he wished.
I describe it as like a sound stew, is what I was thinking of when I was rewatching it. How we've got like, in the beginning, I think I hear there's like running water as Sydney's talking to Carmi
Mhm.
about the article, and then like I feel like more sounds kind of get added in. And they really add to the tension of the episode too. Tell me a little bit about how you created such a tense episode through sound.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, the general structure of it, was they established in well, not that there was a lot of picture editorial in a one shot, but they had kind of said, okay, because there's that song that runs through the whole thing or most of it, so they timed that out, and then the ticket printer was a huge portion went to, and we added more ticket printer, because that was really a sound cue for them. And then yeah, just building up the tension with, okay, now all hell's breaking loose. Let's more pots and pans, more. It was all just one giant ramp for 17 minutes. And again, Chris had a great vision for the whole thing, and yeah, it was just about adding more and more layers and more chaos.
Was
That
the fact that it's oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that ticket printer is probably going to get a SAG nomination.
Oh my
Mm.
gosh, that's funny. Since you kind of already touched upon this a little bit, but like since the episode is done in like real time, like
Mhm.
what kind of challenges did that present for everybody across the board? I mean, I'm sure obviously it's like you had to
Mhm.
rehearse things, but
Mhm.
and I know Scott spoke a little bit to it, but were there other challenges too?
For me, it was more of an opportunity than a challenge because it's one continuous shot and you're sweeping instead of cutting. You can play a little bit more with dialogue panning than you normally can. Because traditionally, if you're cutting from one person to another and somebody's off screen, then they're switching side. You end up just putting the dialogue in the middle. But since it's a roving camera, and if people are walking around or things like that, we were able to pan the dialogue a little bit more, keep the boom in the middle, and pan their lavs around to really give a sense of the space. So that's something I had fun with. Like I said, not particularly challenging, but more of a unique opportunity with a one shot like that. So I had fun with that.
Yeah, that's sounds like a lot of fun. Um, when I was thinking about the part where when Richie and Sid are having a confrontation, and the music gets turned up, and I was thinking about how does that represent Carmy and stuff? Like, did you have like the sounds and the music representing Carmy? Because I feel like it might be what he's hearing in that moment that it's getting louder and it's more intense for him because it's his point of view, maybe.
I mean, I would love to say that was intentional. I can't remember specifically if there was a motivation behind it. It was probably just let's ratchet up the tension more rather than Richie's POV. But yeah, that's an interesting thought. I probably did not think about it that deeply, honestly. I would love to say yes. But yeah, it was probably just let's ratchet up the tension even more when they're arguing and it's all about the tension.
Yeah. Evan, did you have to like what kind of opportunities, I guess, did you have with this episode when it comes to the dialogue and especially in those confrontation scenes, like the one between Richie and Sid?
I think with that, I think it's fun to be able to have everything so clean and so, be able to make it as kind of like it's almost like a smooth runway if you can make it that way for all the other stuff they're going to add on. And so the cleaner you can keep everything, the more the opportunity there is to do all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't work if you can't hear everything. You have to be able to hear the dialogue no matter what you're doing with all that stuff. Because if you can't hear it, that loses some of the tension, right? Because the tension's inherent in what they're saying. So I think the fact that I had everything, even though there was a lot to go through, and sometimes it was hard to manipulate that stuff to make it be the right way. That's also a great opportunity to have that. So kind of like uh, there's an opportunity to make that as clean as possible. You don't always get that opportunity, and that was really a pleasure.
And were you able to pull like with people improvising, did you have to go back and retool things because you wanted to catch those conversations of, oh, like that was really good. I wanted to get more of that.
If they improvise, it's tough because you're not going to find another take for them where they said the same thing. Sometimes you got
Yeah.
lucky with this show, but very often here it's really a question of cleaning up what they've said. And like I've said, there's these tools that are remarkably powerful now that can get rid of noises that a few years ago you would not have been able to do. So that kind of stuff is essential in a show like this where there is a lot of improv. Like I said, sometimes you get lucky and they've said the line again the same way. Very often not the case. That was kind of what made it kind of fun to do, because everything they were doing was so of the moment, but irreproducible. So you have to clean up as best you can what you have.
That's interesting. We kind of touched upon this a little bit. The sound of the machine and cranking out the pre-orders kind of is like a character in this episode, and it works so much with the rhythm of the dialogue, of the music, of the sounds in the background. How did you accommodate that in your work and think about having that kind of pulse in the background as you're working on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, once the ticket printer starts, yeah, it's there for the whole thing for sure. And it was a lot of, moving individual prints in the gaps of the dialogue, that sort of thing, just so it wasn't fighting. So it's like, oh, let's move that one back a couple of frames just so that word is clear, that sort of thing. And then, where it is, it was a little challenging, like where it was physically in the room versus we want to hear it for the tension. So it was a lot of that, like, are we really hearing it in the room, or are we using it more as score in this moment? Because they do go closer to it, farther away from it. So there was a lot of kind of tweaking based on, well, we're maybe a little farther away here, but we want to hear it for the tension. So let's play it not quite as real in this moment. So there was a little bit of that as well.
Well, one thing that makes Evan and Major's life a little complicated in post is that ticket printer is actually running in the scene as we're shooting it. So it wasn't something that you could easily decide where you wanted to drop it in the final mix. It's just there running either on camera or off camera. So it's difficult to figure out what you want to do with it later on when it's running during the entire take.
Yeah, I think
Right.
Evan, you were able to clean most of that out. I don't remember being married to a lot of it. I think when we were standing right next to it, we were married to it, but
Yeah.
earlier on and when we're in the front of house, I think I could do whatever, because we had a
Yeah, I
bunch of
think it was,
wild ticket
it's
printer.
again, there were so many microphones and so many options that you could steer your way around any potential obstacles.
Mhm.
Which was, that was, like I said, a great thing to be able to have.
That's great. I love the way how the episode ends. Obviously, it's kind of a gut punch type of episode. But I also like that the sound is like applause, almost like, and it's probably with the soundtrack, but it almost felt like we did it, but even though they didn't. And it's like there's
We
this
did
irony
it.
there. And did you have any kind of say in how that sonically ended the episode?
No, that's built into, because that's a live track of whatever that song is, which is, I think it's an interesting thing that Chris and Josh, who are producers but also pick the music, they use a lot of live tracks like that then have applause at the end. They did it a couple, 3 or 4 times now, and it's interesting. It has kind of a different energy being a live track, and yeah, it worked out with that applause ending. Kind of comes out of nowhere, but it definitely works. It works for sure. But no, I didn't have anything to do with that one.
I was also thinking about how this format of this episode is so different from the other ones, because I remember watching it the first time being like, it's only 20 minutes, but was there more work in this 20 minute? I mean, I'm sure you guys have a lot of work over the first season, but was there more attention in this 20 minutes than other 20 minutes of other episodes?
Let's see. For me, yeah, I think it was a little more. It was more precise work, I would say, or more tedious work. Just the panning of things and getting them in the right spot. Not necessarily amount of work, but it was certainly different work. It was which was nice. It was kind of a different skill set for me from a typical Bear episode. But I don't know. I'm sure Scott and Evan, you have your own answers.
I don't know if it was necessary. Yeah, it's probably a different set of work, a different set of abilities that come into play when you do something like that versus the standard thing. But I don't remember it being. Yeah, it was still a set of challenges that you have to figure out how to get your way from point A to point B. That's what a lot of this kind of stuff is. So I don't know. Probably the same as him, just a different way of looking at something for change, like checking your head, going, "Oh, this is what we're doing now." Okay.
The one thing in post, when you're shooting a contiguous take like that, you don't have any other alternate takes. There's no place else to go.
Yeah.
That's all there is. So it kind of automatically builds the tension into the scene, but in terms of post, yeah, there's really only one direction to go with it. You can add some things, take some things away, but it's not like you're going to find some alternate take to go to if you want something different.
Hey, you guys shot it in 17 minutes, right? That's a short day for you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you didn't see the 10 hours ahead of that.
I would love to have watched a video of just everyone dancing around the actors trying to keep out of their way while shooting it. I just think that would have been a remarkable bit of ballet to witness.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. Were you all there then? You were all there?
Well, we're not. He is.
I am, but
you were there, so Scott was there. I wasn't sure if, yeah, I figured that there was like post production, but I didn't know if you were all there for some reason or another.
That would have been cool.
And I was there, but offset. So I'm only seeing what's on camera. I'm not seeing what the whole crew is having to do. And that's kind of one unfortunate thing. They had a still photographer there for some episodes, but it would have been nice to get some more behind the scenes stuff, especially for a take like that. It's kind of unfortunate.
Then you have another person to work around, though. I suppose.
Yeah.
Right. They're probably like, everybody out of here. It's already going to be bad enough.
Yeah.
Just put a GoPro on your boom op next time.
Actually, I know a couple of boom ops that have done that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting.
Complicated enough job anyway. Here's your GoPro.
Yeah.
I guess it felt like sometimes there were only a few inches separating. You could see the wall and you could see somebody move by, and then you realize somebody has to be shooting that as well. So, and then there's a guy holding a boom. So I just really felt like it's a miracle nobody got clonked in the head, or maybe they did on some other take. How many takes was that? How many takes did that involve?
I think I'm trying to remember now. I think we shot 2, but they only kept one of them. Obviously, there was no intercutting between them. But I think we did shoot 2, but I think they probably only delivered 1. So yeah,
we only ever saw 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for this chat. Thank you for your work on the episode. It's what a great episode of television, and really telling a story through the sounds and through the editing and mixing and everything. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.